Millionaire grandma broke down in tears after seeing a black waitress's necklace. Eleanor Whitmore adjusted her pearl necklace for the third time as the black limousine glided through the unfamiliar streets. At 83, she had grown accustomed to a life of predictable luxury, charity galas where she knew every face, five-star restaurants with tables permanently reserved in her name, and social circles that had remained unchanged for decades. Tonight had been no different, another tedious fundraiser where wealthy socialites wrote checks to ease their consciences. "Mrs. Whitmore," her chauffeur James called from the front seat, his voice tinged with concern. "I'm afraid the main highway is completely blocked. There's been a multi-car accident ahead. We'll need to take the back roads through downtown." Eleanor sighed, glancing at her diamond-encrusted watch. "Very well, James. I suppose we have no choice." As they drove deeper into the working-class neighborhood, Eleanor found herself staring out the tinted windows at a world she rarely encountered. Small businesses with hand-painted signs lined the streets, children played on stoops despite the late hour, and the aroma of authentic ethnic foods drifted through the air. It felt foreign yet oddly familiar, like looking at a photograph from someone else's life. "Mrs. Whitmore," James said apologetically, "I'm terribly sorry, but the car is overheating. The temperature gauge just spiked into the red zone. We'll need to stop immediately before we cause permanent damage to the engine." Eleanor looked around at the modest neighborhood with barely concealed disdain. "Here? Surely there must be somewhere more appropriate." "I'm afraid not, ma'am. There's a small diner just ahead. I can call for another car, but it will take at least 45 minutes to reach us from your usual service." The thought of standing on a street corner in her evening gown made Eleanor's stomach turn. She had survived 83 years by maintaining control over every situation, but tonight seemed determined to test that resolve. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "But make it quick." Mel's diner stood like a beacon of warm light against the darkening sky. Its neon sign flickered intermittently, casting pink and blue shadows across the cracked sidewalk. Through the large windows, Eleanor could see working-class families sharing meals, truck drivers nursing cups of coffee, and teenagers laughing over shared plates of fries. It was everything her carefully curated world was not. James held the door open as Eleanor stepped inside, her silk evening gown and fur stole immediately marking her as an outsider. The diner fell silent for a moment, curious eyes following her movement before conversations gradually resumed. The air was thick with the scent of bacon grease and fresh coffee, sounds of laughter, and clinking silverware creating a symphony of ordinary life. "Ma'am, you can sit anywhere you'd like," called a voice from behind the counter. Eleanor chose a cornered booth, hoping to minimize her visibility while James stepped outside to call for assistance. She sat rigidly, her designer handbag clutched tightly in her lap, feeling more out of place than she had in decades. That's when she saw her. A young black woman, probably in her mid-20s, approached the table with a warm smile that seemed genuine despite the late hour. She wore the standard diner uniform, a simple white blouse and black pants, but carried herself with a grace that reminded Eleanor of someone she couldn't quite place. "Good evening," the waitress said, her voice melodic and kind. "I'm Maya. Can I start you off with something to drink? Our coffee's fresh, and we have some amazing pie if you're interested." Eleanor barely registered the words. Her eyes had locked onto something that made her blood run cold, and her heart raced simultaneously. Around Maya's neck hung a pendant that Eleanor recognized as surely as she recognized her own reflection. The necklace was unique, a delicate silver chain holding a small, intricate locket shaped like a butterfly. But this wasn't just any butterfly. The wings were crafted from mother-of-pearl that caught the diner's fluorescent lights and threw them back in tiny rainbows. Tiny emerald ships formed the body, and the most distinctive feature was a small diamond that sat where the butterfly's head should be, positioned so that it appeared to be the creature's eye. Eleanor had commissioned that exact piece 36 years ago from a renowned jeweler in Switzerland. She had spent months designing it, ensuring every detail was perfect. It was meant to be a peace offering, a symbol of love and forgiveness for her daughter Lila on her 21st birthday. The same daughter who had stormed out of the family mansion on a rain-soaked night in 1989 and never returned. Eleanor's hands began to tremble, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. The room seemed to spin slightly, and she could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. This couldn't be possible. That necklace had disappeared with Lila 35 years ago. How could this young woman possibly have it? "Ma'am?" Maya's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right? You look a little pale." Eleanor forced herself to focus on Maya's face, searching for any resemblance to the daughter she had lost. The skin tone was different, obviously, but there was something about the eyes, large, expressive, with long lashes that seemed to hold depths of unspoken wisdom. And the way Maya tilted her head slightly when she spoke, as if she were genuinely listening to every word. "Your necklace," Eleanor managed to whisper, her voice barely audible above the diner's ambient noise. "That butterfly pendant. Where did you get it?" Maya's hand instinctively moved to touch the jewelry, her fingers tracing the familiar shape with obvious affection. "Oh, this? It was my mother's. She passed away when I was 16, but she always wore this. Said it was the most precious thing she owned." Eleanor felt as if someone had struck her across the face. "Your mother's name," she said urgently, leaning forward across the table. "What was your mother's name?" Something in Eleanor's tone must have conveyed the importance of the question because Maya's cheerful demeanor shifted slightly. She glanced around the diner, perhaps checking if her other customers needed attention, before focusing back on Eleanor with newfound curiosity. "Vanessa," Maya said slowly. "Vanessa Johnson. But honestly, she never talked much about her past. I always got the feeling there were things she didn't want to remember." Maya paused, studying Eleanor's face more carefully. "Why do you ask? Did you know her somehow?" The name meant nothing to Eleanor, but that didn't diminish the impact of seeing Lila's necklace around this young woman's throat. Lila could have changed her name. She could have created an entirely new identity to escape the family that had driven her away. Eleanor's mind raced through possibilities, each more painful than the last. Eleanor started, then stopped. How could she possibly explain without sounding like a crazy old woman? How could she tell this waitress that the necklace she wore might connect them in ways that defied explanation? James appeared at the table, slightly out of breath. "Mrs. Whitmore, the replacement car will be here in 20 minutes. I've also called ahead to have your regular mechanic look at the limousine tomorrow morning." Eleanor nodded absently, never taking her eyes off Maya. "Miss Maya, was it? This necklace, do you know anything else about its history? Did your mother ever mention where she got it?" Maya shook her head, but Eleanor caught a flicker of something in her expression. "Not really. She just said it was special, that it represented hope. Sometimes I'd catch her crying while she held it, but she never wanted to talk about why." Maya's voice grew softer. "I wear it every day because it makes me feel close to her, you know? Like she's still with me somehow." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears she hadn't shed in years. If this necklace truly was the one she had given to Lila, then Maya could be. But no, it was too impossible to consider. Too coincidental. Too much like the desperate fantasies she had entertained in the dark hours after Lila's disappearance. "I'm sorry," Eleanor said, dabbing at her eyes with her silk handkerchief. "You must think I'm a foolish old woman. It's just that your necklace reminds me of someone I once knew. Someone very dear to me." Maya's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "Not foolish at all. Sometimes objects carry more meaning than we realize. This necklace has gotten me through some tough times. If it reminds you of someone special, then maybe that's not such a bad thing." The replacement limousine pulled up outside, its headlights casting long shadows across the diner's checkered floor. James cleared his throat respectfully. "Mrs. Whitmore, your car is here." Eleanor stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. She reached into her purse and pulled out $100 bill, placing it on the table despite having ordered nothing. "Thank you, Maya," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being so kind to a stranger. Maya looked at the money with wide eyes. "Ma'am, this is way too much. I didn't even take your order." "Keep it," Eleanor insisted. "And Maya? Take care of that necklace. It's more precious than you know." As Eleanor walked toward the door, she turned back one last time to look at Maya, who was still standing by the table, touching the butterfly pendant with a puzzled expression. In that moment, Eleanor could have sworn she saw something familiar in the young woman's features, a ghost of recognition that made her heart skip a beat. Outside, James helped her into the back seat of the new limousine. As they pulled away from Mel's diner, Eleanor watched through the rear window until Maya's figure became just another blur of light in the darkness. But the image of that necklace, Lila's necklace, remained burned into her memory with crystal clarity. For 35 years, Eleanor had wondered what happened to her daughter. Now, for the first time since that terrible night, she had a clue. And she was going to follow it wherever it led, no matter how much it might hurt. Eleanor barely slept that night. She lay in her king-sized bed, staring at the ornate ceiling of her bedroom, the image of Maya wearing Lila's necklace playing over and over in her mind like a broken record. By 5 a.m, she gave up on sleep entirely and made her way to the one room in her mansion she hadn't entered in years, Lila's old bedroom. The heavy oak door creaked as it opened, revealing a space frozen in time. Everything remained exactly as Lila had left it 35 years ago. Band posters on the walls, books scattered across the desk, clothes still hanging in the closet. Eleanor had instructed the housekeeping staff never to touch this room, and they had obeyed without question. She moved slowly toward Lila's old dresser, where she knew a particular drawer held the family record she'd avoided for decades. Her arthritic fingers fumbled with the handle before pulling it open to reveal stacks of yellow newspaper clippings, police reports, and private investigator files, all remnants of the desperate search that had consumed the first 5 years after Lila's disappearance. The headlines still made her wince. "Wealthy heiress vanishes, police baffled by Whitmore disappearance, family feud blamed for missing socialite." Each article told the same story, how 21-year-old Lila Whitmore had argued with her family and disappeared without a trace on October 15, 1989. But they didn't tell the real story. They didn't capture the venom in Eleanor's voice that night, or the way Lila's face had crumpled when Eleanor called her boyfriend unsuitable trash. They didn't describe how Lila had screamed that she'd rather die than live under Eleanor's control for one more day, or how Eleanor had shouted back that maybe that would be for the best. Eleanor sank into Lila's old desk chair, the memories flooding back with painful clarity. Marcus Rodriguez had been everything Eleanor despised, a struggling artist from the wrong side of town with no family money, no connections, and worst of all, no ambition to rise above his circumstances. When Lila announced they were in love and planning to marry, Eleanor had seen it as the ultimate betrayal of everything the Whitmore family represented. She pulled out the police report from November 1989, reading Detective Morrison's careful notes about the case. Lila had taken nothing with her except the clothes on her back and her car, a red convertible that was found abandoned 3 states away 2 weeks later. No signs of foul play, no evidence of where she might have gone. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Eleanor's hands shook as she found the photographs taken from Lila's room after her disappearance. In one picture, her jewelry box sat open on the dresser, showing the empty velvet compartment where the butterfly necklace should have been. It was the only piece of jewelry missing, the only thing Lila had taken that couldn't be easily sold or traded. The private investigators' reports from the early 1990s painted a picture of a young woman determined to disappear. Marcus Rodriguez had been questioned extensively, but he insisted he hadn't seen Lila since their relationship ended 2 months before her disappearance. Apparently, Eleanor's interference had successfully driven them apart, though not in the way she'd intended. She said she couldn't live with her family's hatred anymore, Marcus had told investigators. But she also said she couldn't live without their approval. She was trapped, and it was eating her alive. Eleanor found herself crying, really crying, for the first time since Lila's funeral service in 1994, when they'd finally declared her legally finished. She had been so focused on being right, on maintaining the family's reputation and standards, that she'd forgotten to simply love her daughter. The worst part was the last conversation they'd ever had. Lila had come to her one final time, begging for understanding, for acceptance of the life she wanted to build with Marcus. Eleanor could still see her daughter's face, beautiful, desperate, pleading. "Please, Mother," Lila had whispered. "I'm not asking you to approve. I'm just asking you not to hate me for choosing love over money." And Eleanor, in her infinite foolishness, had responded with ice-cold cruelty. "If you walk out that door with him, you are no daughter of mine. The Whitmore name will be dead to you, and you will be dead to me." Lila had stared at her for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she nodded slowly and said, "Then I guess I'm already finished." Those were the last words they'd ever spoken to each other. Eleanor wiped her eyes and picked up the photograph of the empty jewelry compartment again. If Maya was wearing Lila's necklace, it meant Lila had kept it all these years. But Maya had said it belonged to her mother, Vanessa Johnson, a name that meant nothing to Eleanor. Could Lila have changed her name? Could she have recreated herself so completely that even Eleanor's extensive network of investigators had never found a trace? The thought was both heartbreaking and oddly hopeful. If Lila had managed to disappear so thoroughly, maybe she'd also managed to find happiness. But then another possibility occurred to Eleanor, one that made her stomach drop. Maya appeared to be in her mid-20s. If Lila had been pregnant when she ran away, if she'd had a daughter and somehow died young, if Maya was her granddaughter. Eleanor's hands trembled as she calculated the timeline. Lila had disappeared in October 1989. If she'd been pregnant at the time, or became pregnant shortly after, a baby born in 1990 would be 34 or 35 now. But Maya looked much younger than that. Unless Lila had lived for years after her disappearance. Unless she'd had a daughter later, maybe in the late 1990s or early 2000s. Unless Vanessa Johnson had been the name she'd chosen for her new life. The possibilities swirled in Eleanor's mind, each more painful and hopeful than the last. For 35 years she had lived with the crushing weight of their final argument, convinced that her pride and prejudice had driven her only child to her death. But seeing that necklace around Maya's neck had ignited something Eleanor thought had died with Lila. Hope. She gathered the newspaper clippings and police reports, her decision made. If there was even the slightest chance that Maya was connected to Lila, Eleanor was going to find out. She had failed her daughter 35 years ago, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to make things right. Eleanor reached for her phone to call her personal attorney. She was going to need help, and she was going to need it to be completely confidential. After decades of wondering what happened to Lila, she finally had a lead. And this time, she wasn't going to let pride stand in the way of the truth. 3 days after her encounter at Mel's Diner, Eleanor sat across from Thomas Blackwood in his downtown office. Blackwood was the best private investigator money could buy, discreet, thorough, and accustomed to handling sensitive matters for wealthy clients. His office walls were lined with commendations and photographs with celebrities, testament to his reputation. "I need complete confidentiality," Eleanor said, sliding a check across his mahogany desk. "No one can know about this investigation. Not my lawyer, not my staff, no one." Blackwood glanced at the amount and raised an eyebrow. "This is quite generous for what you're asking, Mrs. Whitmore. Background checks usually don't require this level of investment." "This isn't a typical background check," Eleanor replied. "I need you to dig deep into this young woman's life. I need to know everything. Her birth records, her mother's history, where they lived, how they lived. Everything." She handed him the photograph she'd taken discreetly with her phone at the diner. Maya serving another customer, the butterfly necklace clearly visible around her neck. "Her name is Maya, probably in her mid-20s. She works at Mel's Diner on 5th Street. Her mother was named Vanessa Johnson, deceased. That's all I know for certain." Blackwood studied the photo carefully. "May I ask what your interest is in this particular young lady?" Eleanor hesitated. How could she explain without sounding desperate or delusional? "Let's just say there may be a family connection I need to verify. Use whatever resources necessary," but be subtle. She cannot know she's being investigated. It took Blackwood exactly 1 week to uncover Maya's life story, and when he called Eleanor to arrange a meeting, his voice carried an unusual gravity that made her stomach clench with anticipation. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, settling into his chair with a thick file folder. "Maya Johnson's story is both tragic and remarkable. Are you prepared for what might be difficult information?" Eleanor gripped her purse tighter. "Tell me everything." Maya is 24 years old, born on March 15, 2001. Her mother, Vanessa Johnson, died of complications from pneumonia when Maya was 16. But here's where it gets interesting. Vanessa Johnson didn't exist before 1990. Eleanor's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" "I mean there are no records of anyone named Vanessa Johnson matching her description before that year. No birth certificate, no school records, no employment history. It's as if she appeared out of thin air in January 1990 in Chicago, Illinois. She changed her name," Eleanor whispered. "That would be my professional assessment, yes. Vanessa worked a series of low-paying jobs: housekeeping, food service, retail. She kept to herself, had very few friends, and according to those who knew her, she seemed to carry a deep sadness. She never spoke about her past or Maya's father." Blackwood opened the file and pulled out several photographs. Maya was placed in foster care immediately after Vanessa's death, but she was fortunate. A woman named Delilah Washington, who had worked with Vanessa at a cleaning service, petitioned to become Maya's guardian. She's the one who raised her through high school. Eleanor studied the photos, grainy images of a young Maya at various ages, school pictures, a few candid shots. In each one, she wore the butterfly necklace. "I spoke with Delilah Washington," Blackwood continued. "Lovely woman, very protective of Maya. She told me something interesting about Vanessa's possessions." Eleanor leaned forward. "What?" "When Vanessa died, she left very little behind. But she had a small wooden box that she guarded fiercely. Delilah said Vanessa made her promise to give it to Maya when she turned 18. Inside were only 2 items, the necklace Maya always wears, and a letter." "A letter?" Eleanor's voice was barely audible. "Addressed simply to L. Never mailed, never opened by Maya or Delilah. Maya keeps it sealed, says she's not ready to read her mother's secrets yet." Eleanor felt the room spinning. L for Lila. It had to be. "There's more," Blackwood said gently. "I managed to obtain some medical records from when Maya was treated for a broken arm at age 12. Her blood type is AB negative, extremely rare, found in less than 1% of the population." Eleanor gasped. Lila had been AB negative. She remembered because it had caused complications during a childhood surgery. "Mr. Blackwood," Eleanor said slowly, "I need you to find out more about this letter. And I need to know exactly when and where Vanessa Johnson first appeared in Chicago. Leave no detail unexamined. Mrs. Whitmore, may I ask, do you believe this Vanessa Johnson was someone you knew?" Eleanor met his eyes directly. "I believe Vanessa Johnson was my daughter, Lila Whitmore, who disappeared 35 years ago. And I believe Maya is my granddaughter." Blackwood's professional composure cracked slightly. "Mrs. Whitmore, that would be extraordinary if true. It would explain everything." Eleanor continued, her voice growing stronger. "Why Vanessa had no history before 1990. Why she seemed sad and spoke of being unwanted by her family. Why she kept that necklace. I gave it to Lila as a peace offering right before she disappeared. What do you want me to do next?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd learned. Her daughter had survived. Lila had created a new life, had a daughter, but had died far too young, probably never knowing that Eleanor spent every day of 35 years regretting their last conversation. "I need proof," she finally said. "Something definitive. And I need to know more about Maya herself. Her personality, her dreams, her struggles. If she truly is my granddaughter, I need to understand who she is before I approach her. That might take some time to arrange discreetly." "I have time, Mr. Blackwood. I've waited 35 years to know what happened to my daughter. I can wait a little longer to do this right." As Eleanor left Blackwood's office that afternoon, she felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: purpose. For years, she had drifted through her wealthy, empty life, attending meaningless social functions and managing charitable foundations that felt more like obligations than passions. But now she had a mission. If Maya truly was Lila's daughter, then Eleanor had a chance to give her granddaughter everything she had failed to give her own child: unconditional love, acceptance, and support. The question was, would Maya want any of that from the grandmother whose pride had driven her mother away? Eleanor had destroyed one relationship with her stubborn prejudice. She couldn't afford to make the same mistake twice. But first, she needed absolute certainty. And she was beginning to form a plan for how to get it. 2 weeks later, Eleanor found herself sitting in the same corner booth at Mel's diner, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. This time, she had come prepared with a carefully crafted story and a legitimate-looking folder filled with documents about the Whitmore Foundation Educational Initiative, a scholarship program she had hastily created just for this moment. Maya approached her table with the same warm smile as before, though Eleanor caught a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Well, hello again," Maya said pleasantly. "I wondered if I might see you back here. How are you doing?" "Much better, thank you," Eleanor replied, gesturing to the empty seat across from her. "Actually, I was hoping we could talk. Do you have a few minutes?" Maya glanced around the moderately busy diner, then slid into the booth. "Sure, but just for a bit. What's on your mind?" Eleanor opened her folder with practiced casualness. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other night, about your mother and how she raised you on her own. It reminded me of why I started my foundation." She pulled out several official-looking documents. "We provide scholarships and support services for young people who've overcome significant challenges, particularly those who've lost parents at a young age." Maya's eyes widened with interest. "That sounds amazing. What kind of support? Full college tuition, living expenses, mentorship programs, career placement assistance. We're quite selective, but you seem like exactly the kind of person we're looking for." Eleanor leaned forward conspiratorially. "Tell me about yourself, Maya. What are your dreams?" For the next 20 minutes, Maya opened up in ways that surprised them both. She spoke about her love of literature, her secret dream of becoming a teacher, and how she'd been saving every penny from her diner wages to attend community college part-time. She talked about Delilah, who had sacrificed so much to raise her, and about her mother Vanessa, who had worked multiple jobs but always found time to read bedtime stories. "Mom used to say that education was the one thing no one could ever take away from you," Maya said, her fingers unconsciously touching the butterfly necklace. "She never got to finish high school herself, but she made me promise I'd find a way to go to college." Eleanor felt tears threatening. These were exactly the values Lila had grown up with, the same dreams Eleanor had once supported before pride had poisoned everything. "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman," Eleanor said softly. "I'd love to honor her memory by helping you achieve those dreams." Maya's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. This seems too good to be true. There is one small requirement," Eleanor said, pulling out another document. "All our scholarship recipients must undergo a comprehensive health screening. We've found that many young people from difficult backgrounds have undiagnosed health issues that could interfere with their studies. It's completely free, and it ensures we can provide proper support throughout your education." Maya looked confused. "A health screening? Nothing invasive," Eleanor assured her quickly. "Just basic blood work, a physical exam, vision and hearing tests. We partner with the city's best medical facilities. Think of it as a complete wellness check that would cost thousands of dollars if you paid for it yourself." Eleanor held her breath as Maya considered the offer. Everything depended on this moment. She needed Maya's DNA, and this was the only way she could think of to get it without arousing suspicion. "I guess that makes sense," Maya said slowly. "When would this happen?" "This Friday afternoon, if you're available." The appointment is already scheduled at Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Sarah Chen's office. She's one of the finest physicians in the city. What Maya didn't know was that Dr. Chen was Eleanor's personal physician and longtime friend, who had agreed to help after Eleanor explained the situation. The blood work would be legitimate, but a sample would also be sent for DNA analysis. Friday works, Maya said, excitement growing in her voice. But are you sure about this? I mean, you barely know me. Eleanor reached across the table and gently placed her hand over Maya's. The moment their skin touched, she felt an electric recognition, the same soft warmth she remembered from holding baby Lila decades ago. Sometimes you meet someone and just know they're special, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. You remind me of someone very dear to me. Someone I loved deeply but lost too soon. Maya squeezed Eleanor's hand in return. I'm sorry for your loss. Was it recent? A long time ago, Eleanor whispered. But seeing you, it's like she's not entirely gone. As Eleanor prepared to leave, Maya stood and impulsively hugged her, a gesture so natural and heartfelt that Eleanor nearly broke down completely. In that embrace, she felt echoes of Lila's warmth, her generous spirit, her capacity for love despite life's hardships. Thank you, Maya whispered, for seeing something in me worth investing in. I won't let you down. Eleanor held her a moment longer than necessary, breathing in the scent of Maya's shampoo and memorizing the feeling of holding what might be her granddaughter. You could never let me down, dear. Just by being who you are, you've already given me more than you know. That evening, Eleanor sat in her study with a glass of wine, staring at her phone. Dr. Chen had confirmed that Maya's appointment was set, and the DNA lab was standing by for rushed processing. Within 48 hours of Friday's appointment, Eleanor would know with scientific certainty whether Maya was her granddaughter. But as she replayed their conversation, Eleanor realized something unexpected had happened. Regardless of what the DNA test revealed, she genuinely cared about Maya. The young woman's dreams, her kindness, her resilience in the face of loss, these qualities had nothing to do with potential family connections and everything to do with Maya's individual character. For the first time in 35 years, Eleanor felt something stirring in her heart that had nothing to do with guilt or regret. It felt dangerously close to hope, and terrifyingly similar to love. Friday couldn't come soon enough, but Eleanor found herself both desperate for answers and afraid of what those answers might mean for both their lives. The phone call came on Sunday evening at exactly 6:47 p.m. Eleanor had been pacing her study for hours, checking her phone every few minutes despite knowing the DNA lab wouldn't call before their promised time. When Dr. Chen's number finally appeared on the screen, Eleanor's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. Eleanor. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but professionally neutral. I have the results you've been waiting for. Eleanor sank into her leather chair, gripping the armrest with her free hand. Tell me. The DNA comparison shows a 99.9% probability that Maya Johnson is your biological granddaughter. There's no doubt, Eleanor. She's Lila's daughter. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Even though she had suspected, even though all the evidence pointed to this conclusion, hearing it confirmed felt like being struck by lightning. 35 years of wondering, of guilt, of sleepless nights, and her granddaughter had been living just across town, serving coffee and saving pennies for an education. Eleanor? Are you there? Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for everything. After hanging up, Eleanor sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour. Maya was Lila's daughter. Her granddaughter. The butterfly necklace around Maya's neck had been worn by Lila when she ran away, pregnant and alone, to create a new life as Vanessa Johnson. The next morning, Eleanor called Maya with a carefully controlled voice. Dear, I was wondering if you'd like to visit my home this afternoon. I have something important to discuss with you about the scholarship program. Maya arrived at the Whitmore estate in the early afternoon, her eyes wide as she took in the sprawling mansion and manicured gardens. Eleanor met her at the front door personally, something she rarely did for anyone. Your home is incredible, Maya said, following Eleanor through the marble-floored foyer. "I've never seen anything like it." Eleanor led her to the sunroom, where she had arranged for tea and small sandwiches. They sat surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rose garden, afternoon sunlight streaming across the delicate china. "Maya," Eleanor began, her voice already unsteady, "what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear. It's about your mother, about your family, and about connections you never knew existed." Maya set down her teacup, instantly alert. "What do you mean?" Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. Lila at age 21, wearing the butterfly necklace, laughing at something off camera. She placed it on the table between them. Maya gasped, her hand flying to her throat to touch her own necklace. That's my necklace. But how do you have a picture of someone wearing it?" "Because that someone was my daughter, Lila Whitmore. She disappeared 35 years ago after we had a terrible fight. I gave her that necklace as a peace offering, but she left before I could apologize for the hurtful things I said." Maya stared at the photograph, then at Eleanor, confusion and disbelief warring in her expression. "I don't understand. My mother's name was Vanessa Johnson. She never mentioned any family." Eleanor pulled out more photographs. Lila as a child, family portraits, newspaper clippings about her disappearance. "Your mother changed her name when she left. Vanessa Johnson was the identity she created to escape a family that had rejected her." "No," Maya said, shaking her head vigorously. "That's impossible. My mother would have told me if she had family. She wouldn't have kept something like that secret." Eleanor's voice broke as she continued. "Maya, your mother was pregnant when she ran away. She was carrying you. And she died believing that her family had disowned her forever." Maya stood abruptly, backing away from the table. "You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. My mother died alone because she had no one, because her family abandoned her. She told me she was unwanted. She was wanted," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. "She was desperately wanted. I spent 35 years looking for her, hiring investigators, hoping for any sign that she was alive. I never stopped loving her, even though my pride was too strong to tell her that when it mattered." Maya's face crumpled as the truth began to sink in. "You're saying you're my grandmother? That my mother lived her entire adult life believing she was alone when she had family who cared? I had a DNA test done," Eleanor admitted quietly. "You are my granddaughter, Maya. You are Lila's daughter. And I am so deeply sorry that my stubbornness cost your mother, cost both of you, so many years of love and support." Maya collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. "She suffered so much. She worked herself to death trying to provide for me. She got sick because she wouldn't take time off work to see a doctor. She died believing she was worthless." Eleanor moved to kneel beside Maya's chair, gently taking her hands. "She wasn't worthless. She was brave and loving and strong. She raised a remarkable daughter despite having no help, no support, no family. She succeeded in ways I never could. But she could have had help," Maya cried. "She could have lived. If you had just swallowed your pride and found her." "You're absolutely right," Eleanor said, her voice raw with pain. "I failed her in every way that mattered. I drove away the most precious thing in my life because I was too concerned with appearances and control. I can never undo that damage, and I can never bring her back." Maya looked up at Eleanor through her tears, studying the older woman's face. For the first time, she could see resemblances. Something in the eyes, the shape of the chin, the way Eleanor tilted her head when she was thinking. "What do you want from me?" Maya asked quietly. Eleanor squeezed her hands gently. "Nothing. I want to give you everything I should have given your mother: love, support, acceptance. But I understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if you want nothing to do with the family that failed Lila so completely." Maya was quiet for a long time, processing everything she'd learned. Her entire understanding of her identity had shifted in the span of an hour. She wasn't alone in the world. She had a grandmother, a family, a legacy she'd never known existed. "I need time," she finally said. This is too much to process all at once. Eleanor nodded, releasing Maya's hands. Take all the time you need. But Maya? Please know that meeting you, getting to know the incredible person your mother raised, it's the greatest gift I've received in 35 years. As Maya prepared to leave, she turned back to Eleanor one last time. The letter, she said suddenly. My mother left me a letter addressed to Elle. I never opened it because I wasn't ready for her secrets. But now you know who Elle was. Eleanor finished softly. Maya nodded, fresh tears in her eyes. I think it's time I read what she wanted to say to you. 3 weeks later, Maya sat across from Eleanor in the same sunroom where the truth had been revealed. Between them lay Vanessa's letter, now opened, its pages yellowed with age and stained with old tears. Maya had read it alone first, then called Eleanor with a trembling voice, asking if they could read it together. Dear Mother, Maya began, her voice steady despite her emotions. I know you'll probably never read this, but I need to write it anyway. I need you to know that I forgave you a long time ago. Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling each word like a physical touch from her lost daughter. Maya continued reading. I was angry for so many years. Angry that you couldn't accept Marcus, angry that you chose money and reputation over my happiness. But having my own daughter has taught me something. Sometimes we make terrible mistakes because we love too much, not too little. I named her Maya because it means illusion in Sanskrit, but also mother in several languages. She's the most real thing in my life, the most precious gift I never expected. I wish you could meet her. She has your stubborn streak and your intelligence, but I'm trying to raise her with more kindness than pride. Eleanor wiped her eyes as Maya's voice grew softer. I keep the butterfly necklace because it reminds me that you did love me, even when your words said otherwise. I hope someday Maya will understand that families can be broken by love just as much as by hate. The letter continued for 2 more pages, Vanessa writing about her struggles as a single mother, her pride in Maya's accomplishments, her regret that Eleanor would never know her granddaughter. The final paragraph left them both sobbing. If something happens to me, if Maya finds this letter someday, I want her to know she has family. I want her to know that the Whitmore name might come with complications, but it also comes with a legacy of strength. Tell her I loved you both, even when I couldn't find the words to say it. Maya folded the letter carefully, her hands shaking. She wanted us to find each other. She was always wiser than me, Eleanor whispered. Even as a child, Lila could see solutions where I only saw problems. Over the following months, Eleanor and Maya began the delicate process of building a relationship. It wasn't easy. There were arguments about the past, tears over what had been lost, and awkward moments as they learned each other's rhythms. But slowly, carefully, they created something neither had expected, a genuine friendship built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Eleanor kept her promise about the scholarship, but it evolved into something more personal. Maya enrolled in college full-time, studying education with a minor in literature. Eleanor attended her graduation ceremony, sitting in the front row with tears of pride streaming down her face as Maya walked across the stage. You know, Maya said one afternoon as they sat in Eleanor's garden, I used to dream about having a grandmother. I imagined someone who would bake cookies and tell embarrassing stories about my mother. Eleanor laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent months. I'm afraid I've never baked a cookie in my life. But I have plenty of embarrassing stories about Lila. Tell me another one, Maya said, curling up in her chair like a child waiting for a bedtime story. As Eleanor began a tale about Lila's attempt to dye her hair purple at age 16, Maya touched the butterfly necklace she still wore every day. The gesture had become unconscious, a connection to both her mother and her grandmother that transcended the years of separation. Eleanor's lawyer had suggested that Maya move into the mansion, that she immediately begin learning about the family business and social obligations. But Eleanor had refused. Maya had her own apartment now, her own life, her own dreams. Eleanor supported her from a distance, offering guidance when asked but never insisting on control. The Whitmore Foundation had a new director, Maya Johnson Whitmore, who insisted on keeping her mother's chosen surname as part of her own. Under her leadership, the foundation focused on supporting young people from difficult backgrounds, particularly those who had lost parents. It was Maya's way of honoring Vanessa's memory while building something positive from their family's painful history. On the first anniversary of their reunion, Eleanor and Maya held a private memorial service for Lila in the estate's rose garden. They planted a butterfly garden in her honor, filled with flowers that would attract the delicate creatures Lila had always loved. "Do you think she knows?" Maya asked, watching a monarch butterfly land on a blooming marigold. "I think she's the reason that car broke down outside Mel's diner," Eleanor replied. "I think she's been orchestrating this reunion from the beginning." Maya smiled, touching her necklace one more time. She always was stubborn about getting her way. That evening, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced in 35 years: complete peace. She had her family back, not as she had lost it, but as something entirely new and infinitely more precious. "I love you, Maya," Eleanor said quietly. "I love you too, Grandma," Maya replied, the words still new and wonderful on her tongue. The butterfly necklace caught the last rays of sunlight, throwing tiny rainbows across the garden where 3 generations of Whitmore women, one lost, one found, and one reclaimed, were finally, truly home.